I always have to be so careful when I go on stage after that because I'm scared I'm going to fall down. I did that once at NASA. I tripped on stage, and then I looked out because I was talking about self-esteem at the time, and I said, "See, you like me better because I fell," and then they all cheered. Bear has the best people. Have you noticed this? Yeah. And I hope that you all are making friends with a lot of strangers, because that is absolutely the power of networking and growing and enjoying this moment that we have. We had a pre-event dinner last night. It was small, and I got to be with my panel. And at the end, there were 7 of us there, and we were just talking about our careers and how things had changed. And I thought that really is the one thing that women have. And there are very supportive men in this room. I want to acknowledge all of you. But when you're a woman, the one thing you get as a bonus is that ability to connect on that level, to where you make new family members constantly as you go along. And I know you're going to fall in love with these people on the panel, much like I already have. So this is going to be a fabulous day. And I'm so glad that I was chosen to be here. And I owe it all to this really horrific boss hole that I had years ago. And the moment that he sat me down and he said, "You think," now I used to be a reporter, right? He said, "You think you're going to be a columnist someday? You're never going to be a columnist. In fact, you're never going to be more than you are right now, a reporter." And I have just blossomed so much and made so much money exploiting him for that. And it all ended very happy. It's a long, torturous story, because, you know, when somebody says something like that to you, you may react like I did. I did a typically female thing, which is spend 2 years trying to get this guy to love and respect and treasure me. And then I got a promotion. And it was to be the night city editor. And they took me into the evening news meeting when you figure out what's going on the front page the next day. And the boss hole, who I also refer to as the tormentor, which is the opposite of a mentor. The tormentor had gotten promoted, and he happened to be in the meeting, and city editor said, "Fawn's the new night city editor," and he said, "No, she's just a reporter." And at that moment, I got up, humiliated, walked out into the newsroom to my desk, picked up the phone, and called the editor of the Tampa Tribune, who had been trying to recruit me for 4 years, and I said, "If you want me, make it happen right now." And he did. But then I faced this decision of leaving my safe, secure zone, which is, yeah, I was miserable working for him. I was really tired of being a reporter. But I lived in Denver, Colorado. I had a union-protected job where I could not be fired, made very good money, had a good 401k, great health benefits, 5 weeks of vacation per year. And I was trying to figure out how I could possibly leave to go to Florida, which is where my family was. But how could I leave the security and go into that unknown zone? When a friend said something that I hope you will all remember and keep close to your heart, she said, "Don't let security be your dangerous anchor." And then she said it again, "Don't let security be your dangerous anchor. Because if you ain't doing something, you're doing nothing." So I went into the unknown, became an editor at the Tampa paper, did all the skills that made me so good as a reporter: hard-charging, very impatient, no BS, get it done now, it's black or white, right or wrong. And I had to go into this realm of how to win friends and influence people in a male-dominated environment. And I sucked so bad. People were quitting, and so I went to the bookstore looking for a book that would tell me how, as a strong woman, to be an effective leader. And there really wasn't anything. And this is at the end of the 90s. And a friend of mine says, well, you're a journalist, write it. I said, I need the book. I'm so sick of unqualified people writing about what they don't know. And I started to think, yeah, but I am a journalist. And nobody has gone to the strongest women of our times to ask them what they learned the hard way. So what if I do that? And I had this vision in my head, which was that I would do these interviews for about 3 months, write the proposal for my book, and there would be this bidding war. And it would sell for high 6 figures, maybe 7. I'd write it, turn it in at 6 months, and then at 9 months, it would come out, and I would be, and this woman in Chicago would go to the Barnes & Noble on Michigan Avenue and pick up a copy of Hard-Won Wisdom and call me in the middle of the night and wake me up and say, hello, Fawn. This is Oprah. I love your book. Can you come tomorrow? So then I would be whisked off to the Harpo Studios, where I would get on so well with O that she would have me for dinner that night in the condo with Gail and Stedman, okay? Please, please always have a plan for your success, because that is the greatest piece of fiction you will ever write in your life. All of these great women that I interviewed, and they were everybody from Nobel Peace Prize winners, Olympic athletes, presidents, prime ministers, movie stars, they all said that the one thing that separated them from the people that they passed by was their ability to take a risk and bet on themselves. And that is the truth. Because once you start to realize that it's all about the learning you get on this earth, you have nothing to lose. But we're so gripped by fear. So they kept saying risk, 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 risk. And sometimes somebody says something to you in the right moment that just changes your life forever. And in my case, it was when I did this interview with Sylvia Earle. She's someone that I'm betting, does anybody in this room even know who she is? Well, she is a famous oceanographer, still has the record for living at the bottom of the sea longer than any other human being. They used to call her the female Jacques Cousteau, or her deepness. I prefer to call him the male Sylvia Earle. But when I was interviewing her, she started talking about taking a risk, and I said, yes, but have you ever failed? And she described a colossal failure. One where she took every dime she had and in her early 60s built a company where it made submersibles that would help people like us to go in little submarines and explore the bottom of the sea. And one of her best friends, a scientist, was put in charge, and within 2 years it went belly up. She was completely betrayed, lost every dime, and I said, wow, I bet that left you bitter. And she said, no. I can always make more money. I got the education. Look what I learned. And right then, she just rattled off 10 things she had learned, everything about sometimes you have to learn to let go. And sometimes people you trust will let you down. And she went through this thing, and that's when I realized it really is about the learning. And she said this. Many people resist risk and are only comfortable with the security of knowing when they go to sleep at night what the next day is going to be like. That's comforting, it's secure, and living like that is a choice they are free to make. I recognize the importance most people place on having structure in their lives. Not having structure can be disconcerting. Risk is a choice. It's the only way to test your potential. And I thought about it. Journalists are always taking a year off to travel or go get another degree. So I quit my job to write my book, knowing that if it didn't get published, the worst thing that would happen is I got $1 million worth of free therapy from the strongest women of our times. But I had that plan. And I went in the next day and I quit. That's a big deal, because I had been a journalist since I was 15 years old. And there I was, late 30s, leaving my career. not expecting that my first book was going to be rejected by every major publisher in the United States. That it wasn't a 6-month ordeal, it was a 3-year ordeal until the book came out on September the 10th, 2001. So as I'm signing the first copy for my parents, because I didn't think my mom, a stroke patient, would live long enough to see that book. She lived long enough for 7. And I was signing my first copy, and Dad went up to pay for breakfast, and he said, they just said somebody flew an airplane into the World Trade Center. And of course, like everybody, I was devastated by what happened to humanity. And then my book tour got canceled, which you can't do anything about it when you're an author. You have a 3-month window to make your book take off or not. And they had given up. It was really not going to happen. And I felt this strange relief, because if you can blame your failure on Osama bin Laden, it's much easier than blaming it on your book. And I lived in North Tampa at the time, and the PR person for Borders in South Tampa called me, and she says, we got the weirdest email from your publisher. And I said, well, what's it saying? She says, understandably, the author has decided not to tour at this time for safety concerns. She says, so you can't make it from North Tampa to South Tampa? And I said, of course I can. They gave up. She said, well, why are you giving up? And I asked that for all of us who hit the wall in those moments when we're really beat down and it doesn't look like there's another way. Why would you give up? Because you do have what it takes to get where you need to go, if only you push your way through it. So I pulled out a legal pad, and I figured out where every person I knew had moved all over the country, and I rented a Ford Escort, and believe me, I'm so close to broke, and I started going all over the country, doing anything I could to pitch my book and get it out there. And I wrote 29 letters to the Oprah Winfrey Show. I have no idea what got my book on Oprah with 3 of the women that were in it, not me, but 3 of the women. Oprah holding up my book saying it was inspiring, and then my whole world changing, as you can imagine, being able to shamelessly milk that quote until I became a main stage speaker, and everything changed because I went from being a journalist where it was all negative to being me, and it's all positive and it's happy, and I get to be with people like you and show them that there's another way. And every time you try something different, please learn to expect the obstacles, because they are inevitable. Don't judge yourself by what comes easy. It's the magic that happens when you push through something hard. You'll get where you need to go. Just see it. Believe it. So, you have a lot of work to do at Bear, because there's ground to cover and new things, and you have to learn how to be leaders. Sometimes it's not natural. I was not a natural leader, obviously, right? But it's pretty simple sometimes. I say you learned it in kindergarten. And all you have to do is look at the list of manners that they try to teach kids. Now, some of these, play by the rules. I don't necessarily adhere to that one. And since I'm over 40, I have to have the cheat sheet right up close. But things like respect other people's opinions, forgive mistakes, tell the truth, apologize without blame, keep your promises, communicate anger appropriately, don't use your hands for hitting, congratulate people when they win, learn from your mistakes, accept compliments with thanks, be positive. It's all really simple. It's all versions of the golden rule, right? But we seem to think that there's something different that separates us from them. Ian's very good up here and presentable. And is he somebody that you can't talk to because he's important? No. Just go up to him and talk to him about his beloved pet ferret that he once had. He's a cool guy. It's like there really is. These are human beings that get there because they bet on themselves. So the first obstacle we have is us. I love this picture. What matters most is how you see yourself. You know, the cat looking in the mirror and seeing the lion. But most of us, it's the other way around. And self-esteem is such a huge lesson that we have to take charge of. One of the first interviews that I did was with a woman named Christine Fugel-Hughes. She was the founder of Nature's Sunshine Vitamins, a company that started with $150 and an idea. And I said, what is your leadership strategy? I mean, you had 7 kids and no college, and you turned this into a company that this year will make more than $400 million? And she said, well, I go to the closet, try to find something that fits because I'm overweight, and I just go out in the world and do the best I can. I said, wait, let's talk about your weight. Because I couldn't believe she had said that. I mean, I could have said that. That's always my problem, up and down. She goes, oh. And she starts describing how horrible it is to be overweight and be in charge of a vitamin company. And I said, yeah, but I just read this article about you. You have 5 houses. You're rich as can be. What else do you want? You're where we're all aspiring to go. I said, you're not nice to yourself? And she says, no. She says, I could spend my life in therapy and I wouldn't have it. Well, I started asking all of the people I was interviewing about their self-esteem and found out that that is our curse. It's the universal disease that most women have. 5 people told me that they had good self-esteem in those interviews. And I always say 4 out of the 5, I think we're not telling the truth. The 5th, Jane Goodall, I bought it. Can they do something about this cold air? I'm freezing up here. Anyhow, don't turn up the heat for the rest of the people. But if everybody is saying that negative stuff, is it real? Is it real when you wake up and you say those negative things to yourself? Because you can reprogram it and turn that down. And I am so lucky that I had the experience of seeing these people dealing with self-esteem and knowing what BS it is. It really is not something we need to be worrying about like we do. You can look at the most well put together person in this room, and I can guarantee you that that person had said something negative about themselves within the last 24 hours and likely within the last 2 hours. Now, if you are doing that to yourself, is that making you more successful? How can it not impact your success if you're not able to just go out there and be who you are? You know, authenticity is so important. I love this. It's better to be hated for what you are than be loved for what you are not. And you just have to go with what you are. In my second book, I interviewed Ann Rubenstein Tisch, who's of the Tisch family. Me being from Florida, I just knew that she was the founder of the Harlem School for Girls, which was something I believed in greatly, you know, that they would take these young girls and start mentoring them all the way up until they were successful and got, you know, they were at risk and then they were just real superstars. And she and I did great phone. She said, well, next time you're in New York, let's have lunch. And I said, oh, I'd love to, that's great. And my agent was talking to me about my itinerary when I was going to be going to New York. And I said, well, I'm going to go to Penguin, and then I'm coming back, and then having lunch with this lady, Ann Tisch. She says, do you know who that is? And I said, yeah. She's founder of the Harlem School for Girls. She goes, no, Tisch. Do you not know the Tisch family? I assume people in this room have heard of them, right? She goes, you know, they're the richest people in the world. They own New York. She says, you need a new wardrobe. So I go out, and my friends get me a really expensive suit on sale from Neiman Marcus. And I go to New York to do the best I can. And, you know, I still had not advanced far from my starving author days, right? And I was staying at the Hojo's on Times Square, getting ready for my lunch with Ann Tisch. And I go to the closet, and I see that one suit. It really was a nice suit, but it was a little tight. And then I saw the suit from Dillard's that I had worn 100 times, and I thought, you know, I'm going with that suit. And I grabbed the fake Fendi I'd bought the day before at Canal Street. I went out in the world to do the best I could. So I meet her at one of their Lowe's hotels, and it's on Park Avenue. And we go in there, and we sit down, and this is the wait staff. Hey, Mrs. Tish, would you like some hot chocolate chip cookies fresh from the oven? Mrs. Tish, can I warm your coffee for you? And then you've got all the people stopping by the table. Oh, Anne. And I just said, does that get a little old? I am not real tactful. That's why I was a really good reporter. She goes, when I throw a party, I lock myself in the bathroom and I call my girlfriends on my cell phone. She says, so you're a professional speaker. You probably have to travel a lot. And I said, yeah. There's nothing that I miss more than Friday night home for dinner with my girlfriends, followed by a nice trip to Super Walmart. Dead silence. I mean, dead silence. Rich lady looking at me. I'm like, oh dear. She goes, I just love Target. I said, you gotta be kidding me. She says, no. She says, you know, I went to Super Target 2 weeks ago, and I spent $400, and the woman says to me, Mrs. Tish, would you like to save 10% on your order? She said, and then I told her, yes, I would. So I sent her a note. I said, Ann, I have now told people all over the world, you go to Target. She writes back and says, I go to Kmart too. The point is that you've got what you need by being yourself, by wearing the suit you're comfortable in. It's all there. You don't have to be anybody else, because if I had been somebody else, I would have been as forgettable as possible. But by being yourself and betting on yourself, you can do a lot more. So it really comes down to DNA. Is there any special DNA molecule for the people at the top? I mean, are they that much smarter, that much more savvy because they've got something in the gene pool that blessed them with the CEO gene? No. Shelley Broader, she's in this book that you've got here, The New Woman Rules, and at the time she was the president of Sweet Bay, and then she became president of Michaels, and now she's president and CEO of Walmart Canada. And I love Shelley because I met her, and within 5 minutes she was using the F word, and she's like, I'm like, wow, she holds nothing back. And I said, how does that work in a corporate environment? She says, I don't care. She says, this is all I've got. So work with what you've got. Not necessarily use that language, but, you know, I mean, if it's working for you, go for it. But you don't have to be somebody else. Shelley said that you think that there's all this high-level stuff going on in the big meetings upstairs, but really what it is a different version of the meeting that's going on your floor. You are capable enough to figure it out and accelerate it a little bit. And I know that on our panel, you know, we're going to talk about people, you know, like Nefertiti, going for something when you think that, or other people think you're not ready. You go for it because you can do it. Women hold back, men don't. You know, let it go. Take 5. That's the little booklet that you've got in front of you, and it shows you how to rewrite your thinking. Affirmations are wonderful because if you tell yourself, I can do this, I'm ready for this. You know, there's so many things you can write, and I've used this for personal things. You know, for grief, this year I've had some losses, and I had to come up with the perfect mantra to get me through it. You know, and I had a list of 8, and then I realized if you're not in the mood to say them, it's not going to work. And then I heard that old song that Chicago did saying, knowing that you would have wanted it this way, I do believe I'm feeling stronger every day. I said that hundreds of times in 1 week, and guess what? The grief started to turn around. The brain is like a hard drive that you can write over the negativity. You can change everything. So where you have doubt, replace it with strength and certainty. You have that power, and it only takes at the most 5 minutes a day. How long does it take to say, I feel good about myself? You know, studies say if you keep repeating, I am getting thinner every day, I am looking great, that if you say it enough times, you start losing weight. So I'm going to say it today. Okay, I told you this. Don't let security be your dangerous anchor. Be willing to take the risk, right? Be the little fish in the big pond growing stronger and doing it. You know, I love it. Look at his confidence. He's not afraid. I know it was photoshopped, but we love to worry, don't we? How many of you are really good at worrying? Hands up. Come on, right? I know, it's just, we can make ourselves nuts. That's crazy. How much of the stuff that you worry about actually manifests? It's a small percentage. You know, and I often, if we get to one of the stories, like when I'm cycling, I always have to be mindful. If a storm is over there, it may rain on me. But if I'm stuck in the middle of nowhere, there's just no advantage to worrying about it. So I'll worry about the rain when it comes, because otherwise I might miss a really great ride. That's what we do, is we consume ourselves with worry. So what you can do is what this, the first woman ordained as a rabbi told me she did, Rabbi Sally Present. She said, I schedule my worry. And she says, and I do this now all the time. She says, I figure out how long it deserves. So if it's a problem that I think I should spend 20 minutes worrying about, I say, okay, tomorrow at 9 o'clock, I can worry for 20 minutes, really hard. You know, and I do that with, you know, like certain things, like my house hasn't sold yet. Okay, I'll worry about that at 9 o'clock, because the rest of the day is not going to be ruined by that. Control your worries. Step up, volunteer. That is one way that you gain the most exposure and access to expand your power and influence. They're always looking for people to do things. So if you identify a need within the company that could be met by yourself, do it. And then get on these committees. Look at the people getting this great exposure here. Not only are you doing an awesome job with this event and bringing people together, but you're exposing yourselves to people throughout the company who then can help you to expand your influence and authority. So always be ready to step up. Women love to be liked by everybody. Is this true? Don't you worry more about the people who don't like you than the ones who do? And how silly is that? Because I ask you, do you like everybody? And Pat Schroeder, she was the legendary congresswoman who, she represented the district in Denver when I was a reporter there. And she was one of the first people I interviewed because she was just such a hero of mine. And I said, you know, what about this, that we have to be liked by everybody? She goes, well, that's the good thing about politics. You only have to be liked by 51%. It's like, you know, and I thought, you know, that's a really great way to look at it. So let go of the negative that may exist. Find the people that make you stronger and more successful. Surround yourself with these good people that you enjoy. And just understand that there will be some people that are not your biggest fans. Oh, well. Stop fighting each other. And we were talking about this last night because this dynamic has changed quite a bit. But it used to be that there was a lot of this woman-on-woman competition because there was so little success available. If you got that one piece of pie, it meant I didn't get it. And women have learned to create more pie. The one thing is that we do tend to clash more with each other in ways that suggest that we expect more from each other. It makes you mad when a woman competes really fiercely against you as opposed to when a guy does, because you know, you don't want a woman doing something nasty. We're friends, right? So just clean it up some. Women are not the enemy. Go out and find ways to be supportive. Irene, stand up. Let me just embarrass her, because when I met her, I forgot your last name, I'm sorry. Laura. Okay, so she helped Shaw over here. Shaw was doing some sort of an FDA thing. You can stand too. And it was overwhelming, the amount of work. What did you do?
I sent a lifeline over saying, do you need help? I'll help.
Right, she sends her a note, says, I'm here for you. I'll help you. Okay, you can sit down. That, can you imagine what that meant to her? Because it meant she wasn't alone. And when you back each other, you are creating a new world out there. So find ways to step up and say, I am here for you. Ask for favors. This was something when Hard-Won Wisdom came out. and it hadn't been on Oprah yet, everybody said one thing to me, and it wasn't, wow, that's great, congratulations. It was, you really need to get that book on Oprah. And I kept hearing it, you need that book on Oprah. And I was raking my leaves, and my neighbor called out to me, hey, Fawn, you really need to get your book on Oprah. I'm like, yeah, Dave? Who do you know? He says, well, get Cokie Roberts to call her. I said, Dave, I don't know Cokie Roberts. I interviewed her for an hour and a half. He says, her picture's on the cover of your book. And I thought how interesting it was that a guy wouldn't think twice about asking for a favor, and I would rather die. And I thought, boy, and that was something I explored in my second book, was our ability to ask for help so we can become more successful. And while I was working on that book, Cokie and I were speaking at the same event, and I said, I got to tell you this story. You know, my neighbor called out to me, get Cokie to call her. I said, what would you have done if I had called you and said, can you call Oprah for me? And she goes, well, Fawn, really wouldn't make much difference. Every time I have a book come out, I call her and she never calls me back. But when I did Mustang Sally's, I asked all these women, and they all said they like to help. When somebody asks you for a favor, it really validates you, right? And generally, if you have time, you're going to do it. Sometimes it's dangerous when I stand up on stage and say this because everybody thinks, oh, yeah, I'll ask her. Ask each other, do it frequently, because that's how our network, our good old girls network, comes about, is that we can work it. What good is having power and influence if we don't share it and create more? Don't climb alone. It isn't about you. If you don't get there first, you will get there. And so make other women successful so that they bring you along and you bring the next. There's a line that one of my mentors used with me. She says, you have to learn to reach as you climb every single day. And so that means you pick down to the interns and everybody else. Just bring them up, because we're really changing the world. It's a different world because of this. Advertise your skills, okay? That's something that women don't love doing. How many of you love shameless self-promotion? Right? Not so good. It's hard to do that. I have had to learn to do that. You know, your little booklets there. I figured out I didn't like that the postcards I was doing, they seemed too promotional and people weren't taking them. So I thought, I want people to remember who I am so I can keep getting business. I will give you something. So that is my way of changing how I promote myself. How are you advertising your skills so that people will remember you? Right? Think about that. Because if you are not saying what you're doing, and if you are not promoting what you're doing, they don't know you're doing it. You know, your boss is busy, and your boss's boss is busy, right? Are they worried about you or them? What takes up more time? Thinking how wonderful you are, or the problem person who's not doing their job, right? And Kathy Hannon, who's like one of the managing partners from KPMG, when I interviewed her, she said she had a horrible time with this. And she went in for her annual review and found out that this guy that she was competing with knew that she had a hard time with it, and he was taking credit for everything she had been doing. And her boss showed her this and said, you have to learn to do this. Women have classically made the mistake of believing that hard work will always be recognized and rewarded. That is a fallacy, because people are too busy. Sometimes your hard work will be recognized and rewarded, but make sure of it by sending emails saying, hey, let me tell you what I'm doing with this team. We've got this project going. Keep people updated. Always let them know what you're doing and what you want to be doing next, because otherwise you are invisible. I say this again, do not count on your hard work being recognized and rewarded, because that's not how it works. Give up on perfection. Excellence is good enough. This is one thing that trips us up a lot, because we like to do our best, and in our minds we've thought that that means perfect. But you'll see in the interviews in that book how many people say that this is an environment where we don't have time to be 100% certain or perfect, right? The world moves too fast. Your ability to succeed depends on your ability to take a problem that arises in a decision you've made and quickly pivot, recalibrate, and send it back out. Just knowing that you have the confidence in your ability to do that lets you make decisions and move forward. So, perfection, not so good. I was a straight A student in college until I had Professor Manny Lukoff in Mass Comm and Society, and I was 2 points from an A. And I went to him and I said, what do I need to do to get this bumped up? And he said, boy, I'm really glad you came to me because I automatically would have done that. But since you've told me you're a straight A student, I am going to bust your average. And I hated his guts for that. Until I had that first B and realized the pressure was off. I got to go to football games and I got to start living my life. Did it make any difference in my life that I got a B in Mass Comm and Society? Do you like me less because of that? Did it hold me back in the slightest? No. You don't have to be perfect. Be excellent. You know, give yourself a break. Networking, networking, networking. We know this is important. That's why you're trying to meet people here. But the one thing I want to tell you that is so important is how you network. Because it's not about titles. I already forgot your title, Ian, but I will never forget your ferret, right? It's how it works. People connect. Like if you know, I am an animal person. I can't wait till I get the surprise gift basket from you with all the pet items, right? Right? Yeah, I favor. I want that. I want all that stuff. That tick killer sounds real good. But that relationships drive everything, everything. And it is really much more important that you know about me that I love dogs and cats, that I have to be home Thursday night to watch Grey's Anatomy or see it on my DVR. It's the personal things that will connect us so that we can do what we need to do. And so when you network, title's interesting, make a relationship. And make it a real one. To do anything and to start change in your life, all you have to do is put on your shoes. This is Catherine Switzer, the first woman to run the Boston Marathon officially. And they tried to yank her off the course. You can see the man in the suit in the middle there, and her burly boyfriend trying to knock him out of the way so she could finish that race. She is one of my heroes. I loved interviewing her, and I said, you know, people get so overwhelmed when they need to lose weight or do something different. What do you say? She says, I say, put on your shoes. Well, you ever notice when you need to go on a diet and you make it through that first day, you feel pretty good, right? Just because you started. And it's the same whether it is a diet or changing anything in your career. Just get started. Break it down into baby steps so you can move it forward, and you'll get where you need to go. It's not that hard. I have this belief that the dominoes will fall right into place. I truly believe that in my heart of hearts. Had I not had that sad divorce, or had I not had that boss hole, or had I not had trouble at the Tampa Tribune, I wouldn't be here right now. My obstacles made me. Everything plays out exactly as it should. Sometimes it's very, very difficult. And all you have to do is keep on keeping on. It's been a tough year for me. I ended a relationship of 7 years, then closed on a house that had a myriad of very expensive and hidden problems that my close friend / realtor had not protected me from. Then 2 weeks later, my mother died, and then 3 months later, my father died. It was a nightmare. But once you hit 40, and granted, I have hit 50, but once you hit 40, you have this realization that every time you go through one of those spells where everything is going wrong, and you think that's how your life is going to be, that every day there's going to be another problem. Once you hit 40, you know that those times end. They always end. That you have it to get through anything if you just keep on getting up. Just show up. I mean, I got to tell you, it was hard for me because can you imagine being a motivational speaker going through all of that? But I showed up. And when it gets rough, just show up. You'll hit that turning point. Now, I believe that we learn so much through our athletics. And I've always said everything I learned in life, I learned on the seat of my bicycle when I was in Colorado. I learned, like I said, you don't worry about a storm over there till it's over here. That you have to keep your eyes open for someone trying to run you off the road from behind. I learned that when a man is passed by a woman, he will kill himself to get back in front of her. And the guys, they all bristle, and then I say this one, and I say, the best feminists I ever met when confronted by a flat tire will stand helplessly at the side of the road waiting for a guy to come and change it. And then the guys feel better until I think to myself, well, who's smarter? But I learned a great lesson the day that I was climbing this monster, and this is the Grand Mesa in Colorado, and it was like 7,400 feet of climbing. And at the time, I weighed over 200 pounds, and I was feeling it. I was on a bike vacation, which I always would do one a year, and I wasn't ready. And really, nobody was ready because the sag wagons were all full, hauling people off the road because everybody was quitting. And I had never quit. I just was a very stubborn person, and I realized I had met my match. It was hot. I wasn't up for it. I was exhausted. I was going to quit. But I had to decide how to quit. And sometimes if you just give yourself permission to quit, a lot of the pressure goes off. But in my mind, I thought, I will quit, but only at the last possible moment. So as long as you go, as far as you can go, that's okay. So what I did was I stopped at the side of the road at a rest stop, stayed there for an hour and a half to just kind of catch my breath, restart. It really wasn't fun getting back on the bike after that. But when I did, I said, I can stop every mile or two if I need to. And then when the time comes, I'm getting in the sag wagon because I'm quitting. And I did that. I'm going up this beast of a mountain. And I'm riding, and all of a sudden, this skinny little blonde thing comes around me. And she says, I'm so proud of you. And then I passed this tandem with this guy, Harvey's out front, and Sue's his wife. And I see him turn to her, and he goes, see, I told you you weren't in shape. I looked at her, and I said, I'd stop pedaling and make him haul your butt up there himself. And I'm going, I am stopping. I am so close to dropping dead. I'm just one little bit at a time. And I just finally realized, that's it. No more. I have to quit. And I'm going to quit right at that curve up there. That's all I have to do. So I'm pedaling, because you just keep pedaling a little bit at a time, carries you where you got to go. And I get to that curve, and I look around, and there's the sign that says Summit. You never know how close you are to turning the corner until you turn the corner. So all you can do is just keep moving yourself forward one little bit at a time. You'll get where you need to go. So yeah, you will have failures. Just go out there and let it happen. I love him for this. He's doing his best. And you remember the guy in the Olympics that broke his hamstring, and then he had to finish that race, and his dad ran down and got him over the finish line? Who do you remember? The one who won the race or lost it and just did his best. Don't fear failing. Do anything. You know, remember in The Wizard of Oz when Dorothy goes through that whole mess with the wizard and the Yellow Brick Road and all these people, these weird Scarecrow, the Lion, the Tin Man, goes through all of that stuff, needs to just get back to little old Kansas, right? And She gets there, and then the wizard lets her down, and she can't go, and it's all over. And then Glinda, the good witch, shows up, and she goes, well, just click your heels together. You can go. And she's like, what do you mean? She goes, yeah, you got the shoes. All you have to do is click your heels together. She says, well, why didn't you tell me that? She says, you know, because I could have done this the whole time. She goes, yeah, well, she goes, if you hadn't learned the hard way, you wouldn't have believed me. So she clicks her heels and she goes home, okay? We are all wearing the ruby slippers. When you get to be 50, you realize that you always had the power. You start just saying anything. You know those uncomfortable conversations that you don't want to have? It's like, I don't care. Uncomfortable conversations last between 3 and 15 minutes. That's better than being miserable for a year in this bad relationship. You're out of here, right? It's like, it's the stuff comes out of your mouth because you've got the power. Well, if you're not fortunate enough to be 50, you will be someday. But I can tell you, you are wearing the slippers right now. If you want something, go for it. Ask for it. Take the power. It's inside of you already. Remember the ruby slippers. You are wearing them. You don't have to get to be 50 in order to take charge of your career. You don't have to be 50 to do what you want with your life. Just do it. Click your heels together. You know, listen to those universal prompts. I'm not spending a lot of time on this, but you will know when something is said to you that maybe you should check it out. You know, I am a speaker because Carrie Susan Smith said, you ought to think about being a professional speaker. Whoever thought of such a thing? But you have to know that the universe gives you all the information that you need, and just have faith in that. This man tried to kill me. And I was with 4 other guys, and we were on an expedition in the Everglades in our kayaks, where he was the leader. I say that what he was rhymes with the word douchebag, because he took us out there with no GPS. And even though I had the food for that meal, that night's meal, in my kayak, and if I had gone ashore when I saw land, I would have saved us all, I followed him. We have the power. You know, eventually we did get out of there alive, but that's the one time in life where I thought most that I was going to die, because we were so close to losing all light of day. And I had this moment. I said, okay, God, if this is how you expect I'm going to die, that's okay. It beats doing it the way my mother has done it, you know, over 20 years, stroke, Alzheimer's. I said, you know, this is okay. But if this isn't what you have in mind, you need to do something right now. And we did find a little island. But that helped me with fear. And shortly after that, on my 50th birthday, I had a Groupon and I went skydiving. And I'm in the plane, I'm not even remotely scared. I say to myself, I will dive fearlessly into every moment for the rest of my life. That became my mantra. I will dive fearlessly into every moment for the rest of my life. And we scoot to the edge of the plane, and as planned, he clips me to him, and I'm supposed to turn to him and give him the okay sign. At which point I turned to him, gave him the okay sign, and for the first time, catch a whiff of his breath. And it smells like he has just consumed a 5th of Jack Daniels. So I say, okay, God, if this is what you have in mind for how I'm supposed to die, I'm okay with it, because it beats doing it like Mom. It's quick, I get that. But I am going to dive fearlessly into every moment for the rest of my life. And that is what I do now. And if I can pass that on to you, imagine what you can do. You know, this is my friend. She's in Peru right now. She was a lieutenant colonel in the Army, and amazing. She was in 7 IED explosions, came back and had some sort of a virus that put lesions on her brain, and she became paralyzed, and she fought her way through that. But then she went blind, and all she sees is just dark and light. That's it. Nothing specific. And this year she did a triathlon. She climbed 5 14,000-foot peaks. She did a 500-mile bike ride. And like I said, she climbed Machu Picchu 2 days ago, and she's climbing up to 21,000 feet. I think tomorrow. Now, if Kathy Champion, and that's her real name, right? In fact, she would be great to speak at this event next year. If Kathy Champion can get up and do it every day, why can't you? Seriously. She has an excuse to sit it out, but chooses not to. So don't take the easy way. Take the hard way. You know, we always hear about leaning in, lean out, balance yourself. Know that even though this is a wonderful and important company, it does not define you. And remember this, we've come a long way. We haven't even had the right to vote for 100 years. Yeah, I do wish we had 51% of the women in the Fortune 500, but we don't. But what we do have is the knowledge that we have changed so much. In my lifetime, I have seen us go from having separate classified ads of jobs for men and jobs for women. I have seen us go from having caps in professional schools that limited us to 20% of the women in the classes for doctors and vets and lawyers to now having over 50% in those schools. I've seen us do so many amazing things to the point where a woman may be president. I've seen things change so that when women are raped, they're not crucified on the stand and told, why did you wear that? Didn't you know that that would entice somebody? Or that when a woman was beaten, and she would be asked by the police, well, didn't you know that, or what did you do to provoke that? Our world has changed. It has changed. We have so much power. And I'm going to wind this up so that we can take some questions, but I want you to realize that's what the women before us did. I always say that if you go to work without constantly feeling like you are being discriminated against, harassed, or minimized, you have to thank every woman in her 60s, 70s, and 80s for clearing the path, because they did that for us. But now you are the next round, and it's what are you doing for each other to propel each other forward, upward, and doing it together, because it is a shared moment where you have the power. You're wearing the slippers. So click your heels together and let's make something big happen. I want to thank you so much for your attention. You've been such a great audience, and thank you very much for being so attentive. Can we get some questions?
Hi, Fawn.
Hi.
I'm Jennifer, and I would like to know, how would your advice differ between somebody who's just starting out his or her career versus somebody who's already accelerated and exceeded in her career, and how would she or he help to further develop their career?
I don't think that I would change it much. I think the ones that are farther along, I'd say just bring the other ones up. To the younger ones, I would say ask for help, ask for help, ask for help. Make relationships. Find out how to be helpful to others and that they will help you. Don't be self-serving about it. And it's just go for things you don't think you can get. I would always say that, because I think somebody who gets to a higher level probably has figured out that there's some magic in doing that. Just go for things. Thank you. Yeah, Irene.
Well, just on the heels of that, you say ask for help, and we talked earlier about how difficult that is. So can you give us some tips on when we should ask for help and getting away from the fear of asking for help, and what that consequences are? Okay,
that's good. So how do we ask for help? How do we know when it's time? Well, when you're drowning, ask for help, and try to do it ahead of time, because you know, it's a shared experience. I will never forget somebody offering help. So are you offering help like she did? You know, I came in on deadline and I had a huge story and had a big chart that had to be typed in for the next day's paper, which is clerical stuff. But I had to do the story and I didn't know I was going to do it all. And my managing editor said, I'm not doing anything. She came over, she took the thing and she typed in my chart. That happened in 1987 and I never forgot it. Because to me, that's the core of leadership, is when you're there for your people. So in terms of asking for help, just identify who is going to be able to make it easy for you and go to them. It makes them feel good to pitch in. You know, I've had, in all these years that I've asked for help, I've had one person turn me down. And it was when Hard Won Wisdom came out, and I was asking people in Tampa Bay, women, just some of their ideas, and someone recommended that I call this woman, and she said, "We don't care about your book. Everybody's scared." And I thought, wow. And never heard from her again, never saw her again. I guess I didn't need her help. But everybody else that I've ever asked has always been there for me, and I'm very grateful for that. Anything else? Get one back there.
Good morning. Thank you for your very inspiring words today. I have a question about networking. What are some tools that you can recommend for maintaining networking relationships over time when you're a busy professional, a mom, and all those other things that go along, and you're trying to fit the gym into life as well? So how do you manage to keep and maintain networking relationships over time?
I think that's a great question. How do we maintain our networking relationships over time? It's very simple when it's friends, because do you have trouble staying in touch with your friends? What do? You text them, you email them, you call them, right? And I have a lot of friends that I have met from what I do that they would be in that category of people who you really can't get on their calendar, except when they're driving home from work, they want to talk about what their kid did. And so once it becomes personal networking, it's pretty easy to just text and do things like that. If it's somebody where there's a little bit of a difference and a gap, just kind of keep hammering away at it with emails. Know when you have to touch base. I also learned something about networking, which is that if I scheduled an afternoon just for networking, I could do a heck of a lot. I could do lunch, 2 coffees, drinks, and dinner. That's 5 different networking sessions in one day. And so that is one strategy I have. And, you know, networking is important, business is important, but, you know, when it comes to rounding yourself out, it really is the whole you that matters most. And, you know, like Laura had her little boy has strep throat as she was going through all the planning for this thing, and then you realize, you know where your priorities are. The rest of it will fall together with that. So.
Hi, Fawn. Thank you for sharing your story. I was wondering, who was your most fascinating interview with and why?
Oh, boy, that's really hard. Okay, now, I loved Helen Thomas at the time because she was the dean of the White House press corps. She was a journalist, and she was funny, and she took me to dinner, and I got to ask how Eleanor Roosevelt was, which was really cool. Sylvia Earle was, because the timing of that interview made such an impact on my life. It was really fun dive bombing and getting Hillary Clinton. The worst one I ever did was Janet Reno because I really screwed that one up. She was running for governor in Florida. So if you remember, she was the attorney general for Bill Clinton and had never commented on any of Clinton's issues, like Monica Lewinsky or any of that, because it was under investigation, and she could say it was always under investigation. Well, suddenly she's out, and I'm working as the senior editor of the Alternative Weekly in Tampa at this point, and I invited her to come in for a group interview, and I asked her, I started asking her about that time and everything, and you could tell she was kind of angry. So when you start making people mad in an interview, you ask a real slow pitch question to get them to be your friend again. So I said, was there anything you wish you had done before you left Washington? And she said, well, yes, I wish I had learned to do an Eskimo roll. And I know about Eskimo rolls. I'm a big kayaker. You know, that's when they, right? So I said, really? I said, so because, and this, you know, she has Parkinson's. I said, because you just fell 2 weeks ago and that would have helped you get up? I thought she was making a joke. She goes, no, an Eskimo roll is a kayaking maneuver that when you feel yourself going under, it brings you back up. And I said, oh, because your campaign is having so much trouble and your party wants you to get out. And she's like, no. And then the editor looks at me, she goes, Fawn, she's being literal. It's like, okay. So, and what was so funny about it is that I had her mic'd up, so when I was transcribing it, that was right when the microphone fell into the couch, and I could barely hear it, and it was just, oh, that was just the worst of all of them. And fortunately, she's never been seen again, so. But no, I've really been lucky. I've had a lot of fun with it, a lot. Okay, there's somebody over here.
Morning,
Yes.
Fawn. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I think you made a really great point about these trailblazers who really helped our generation of women. What words of advice would you have for our daughters or young women coming up to help break the cycle of negative self-talk and holding themselves back? Because they really do have even more advantages than we ever had.
Right, and I work with, that's a great one, is what for young people, is to just remind them that this is a game we play to ourselves, and that this is something, you know, I was amazed by the friends of mine who told their girls what was going to happen at puberty. You are going to hate me, and you are going to be really mean to me, and this is, right, so that when it happens, they'd like, see, I told you. And that I think you can do a really good job of setting them up to understand that self-esteem is something that will, no matter what they do, it will bother them, but that the popular girls have the same issue, and everybody does. And try to give them the groundwork for that. Really, it's that Take 5 book is all they need to get control of that. It's interesting, on Facebook, I always have fun with it, and please add me, by the way, but that I made friends on Facebook with all of the popular girls from when I was in high school. And, you know, of course, I was the dorkiest dork, okay, in high school. And it's been so interesting to see how their lives played out and how much trouble they had. And then also in talking to them about how they saw themselves when I saw them as the popular pretty ones. And they had the same issues. This is what we do to ourselves, and it really isn't very fair, but that's what we do. One last question. Yeah.
Hi, my question is actually building on the one we just talked about. You mentioned that after turning 51, may understand they have the power. What would you tell your younger self, just if you had one thing to share? And what advice would you give to someone who might have reached 50 about helping to mentor people who are younger in their career in a way that you can be most helpful?
Okay. So what would I tell my younger self now that I'm old? Nice. Learn to play the game, because I did not understand it. That's, you know, I suggested they give you this book, The New Woman Rules. I've got a bunch of books. I love them all. They're like children. But that book interviews all these successful women, and they just lay out what you have to do in terms of strategy. And none of that was natural to me. And I just was bull in a china shop from the minute I got in the corporate world, and newspapers are corporate, till the time I left. I didn't understand things that would have made me successful. I think I would have assigned myself How to Win Friends and Influence People until you read that 4 times until you get it, because I wasn't natural at any of that. In terms of life balance and all of that stuff, I had it right. I did have it right. You know, I'm doing a multi-generational thing for an event in a couple of weeks, and I was looking at the boomers versus Gen X, and I realized I'm Gen X, even though I'm the very end of the baby boom, because I've always been very concerned about life balance and having that big picture together. And I remember, you know, the day that my editor once said to me, "You care more about that bicycle than you do your job." And I was like, yeah. But I still had more front page stories than anybody in the newsroom, so it wasn't like I could get in trouble for it. Balance. Because when I leave this earth, we will know I had a really good time, and that I had great friends and all of that. So that's the good part. And the second part was on how older ones can mentor younger ones and do it. I think one thing I hope that older ones do, and I hate thinking of myself as, you know, my friend's pregnant, she's 33, and she said, "I want to recreate the family structure here since my family's not here, like having, you know, local grandparents for the baby." And I said, "Jenny, You will never use the word grandmother, grandma, nana, nanny, any of that stuff with me ever. I am crazy Aunt Fawn, and that's all it's going to be. But that people, that once they hit 50, the thing that they need to do is really share the fact that they have had these insecurities and still moved beyond it, and how to just let it go. You know, we shouldn't have to wait until we get wrinkles to be smart. We can be smart when we're unwrinkled, so we can share that. And I know that I'm out of time for this, but the good news is we've got a really great panel. I'm not done. You'll see me some more. And you get a break. I am so thrilled to be here with you all. You are so wonderful, and I appreciate just all this great attention, because I love attention. Thank you very much.